Another Tuesday night, and I ain't got nobody.
Yeah, but that's by choice.
That's right.
You
I,
could you could you could open up your door, go outside and open up the gate. Of course, you'd have to put Vigo in another room and close the door. Otherwise, you don't want a repeat of that. But you could open up your door and just stand there with cookies and welcome everybody in. But
you know, damn. You know what's impossible is
what's
that
that?
everything you say, we can branch off into a whole conversation because that one bit, or maybe I'm just blown out of my skull where I don't know
Well,
what's reality, but anything can trigger a whole slew of freaking things, dude.
run with it, man. So what? Okay, now I know that's not your personality. You're not that kind of person.
Oh,
I,
what?
I I understand that. The kind of person who would just open up the door, open up the gate, and stand there with a tray of cookies and Cuban coffee, and just say, "Hey, come on in. We're gonna watch a movie or whatever." But
For the public? No.
yeah, for the public, yeah, that's what I mean.
To your house. Who does
But
that?
but if you were, let's say, you needed to go to the store,
Oh, in search for love, you're saying?
and no, 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 not in search for anything. Let's say you needed to go to the store and you just decided, it's a nice day, it's not too hot, I'm gonna walk. And you start walking down the street and you passed somebody who's standing out in front of their house with a tray of cookies and a bunch of Cuban coffee. The door is open and you can see a bunch of people in the house. They're all
Mm-hmm.
standing there drinking coffee and talking.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Hey, yeah, come on, we're gonna come on in, man. We're gonna put on a movie, and this is a movie we're gonna watch, and we're all just gonna have a good time. And you're welcome to join us if you want."
Uh-huh.
Do you go?
Well, before I answer that,
Okay.
after the short time that we've known each other, sincerely,
Mhm.
what would you think that I would do?
I'm not sure because I think it would ultimately depend upon your mood.
But if you had to go with a choice, a preponderance of direction, considering myself in a general sense, what you know about me or your
Considering in a general sense, probably not. But my question to you is, do you even think about
but I have an answer for you.
it? Mhm,
And I'm gonna use a song.
mhm.
You don't know me. I'm not a little toy. And don't well, the answer is you're right. I would not. In fact, I would go even faster.
Okay.
I don't want the only people that I it has to be a close knit. Like I search you guys out
Mhm.
and we communicate and stuff. I have a small, very small network of
Okay.
people across the country.
Now, that's where I was going to go next. Um, you know the person, not super well. You're not best friends. You don't, spend hours on the telephone or bum around to get in it. But you know the person, and that person's cool. Does that change your mind?
If I'm gonna be not um coy about the whole thing, or not coy, but what's the word? Silly about it. Like I'm gonna leave the silliness. It would depend.
Hmm.
I don't know that I want to be holed up in any place watching a movie uh,
Hmm.
with people, regardless.
Yeah.
I'm not a very but yeah, I will sit with a friend and
Hmm.
converse over things that
Yeah.
I will do
Okay.
that. But this whole social activity thing. The other day, I was at the Walmart,
Hmm.
and the one guy is bringing back the cart, and I'm opening the door to get in,
Hmm.
and then he's saying something to the other guy about Italian this or that, and we start getting into a conversation. He says, "Oh yeah, I'm Italian." He says to me. I said, "Oh," and I told him the Uraldi name for my father, and he says, "No, it's Giraldi or whatever he said." Um, and I said, "No, it's this way and stuff. It's too complicated for me to." But he would know better because he's Italian. But then it's
Hmm.
not like the name is. And we got into that little conversation. So I'm perfectly happy to have a conversation randomly,
Sure.
like that.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
How about
Well,
yourself? Would you,
now,
if they open up the door?
again, it depends on. Well, number one, it depends on the mission. Why I left the house to begin with. If I knew the person, it might be okay. I need to run to the store for a minute because I have to get that done. But
Right.
then on the way back, we'll see. I might be able to hang for a little bit, but I can't hang with you long enough to watch a movie if I
What if they
know
tell,
the person.
what if they
If
tell
I
you like this?
don't know the person, if I don't know the person at all, I'm with Greg. Turn tail and run. Say, thanks for the invite, but thanks.
Well, what if they say, okay, no problem, brother. Let me just go ahead and go to your house then. Come on, everybody. Come on.
Yeah, that's just not going to happen.
No, but you see what you're see, those are the possibilities you let in the door once you
No,
open up
I don't. Let's see.
possibilities.
I don't think so. I think if you're being invited into somebody's house, there's already a crowd of people. You can see them standing in there yakking and everything and BS, and it looks like everybody's having a good old time. If I know the
Congo,
person, again, I may consider it. But if I don't know who that person is, it's just like, yeah, well, thanks for the invite, but I've got things, I got other things I got to do.
yeah.
I appreciate it, but no thanks.
Come on,
You know,
everybody.
I, what I was
Conga line at Mark and Linda's. We can jump up and down on the furniture. Come on, let's go.
well, see, what I was trying to do was gauge your spontaneity.
Oh, I'm not.
Because I know we both get into our ruts where I just want to do this and I just want to do that and I'm trying to make it through life and leave me alone to do this, that, and the other.
I'm
But if
literally that.
somebody from out of the blue comes up with something that actually sounds fun, that yeah, I might want to do that. How open are you to that?
According to my traits results, I am not a very open person. I have some open traits, but I'm not very on their little gauge thing with all the
Mm-hmm.
different tests they've run. I'm generally not too interested in being open to such things. I'm actually quite the loner. Literally,
Well,
like,
yeah, well,
you know,
I know that, but oh, and by the way, in answer to your statement there, Linda says you can jump on the furniture except her recliner. Nobody touches her recliner.
you have just opened up the door. Linda has just what is it? What is it when you the word's not trapped. There's a word that was more formal. Committed,
Yeah.
committed, committed you to an evening of.
No. She's committed herself because I'm the one that said no. She said, "Yeah, come on, jump on the furniture." I'm like, "Okay, you just brought that on."
Hey, everybody! It's Roomba time.
I'll I'll be over in the corner taking down names.
I remember when I was a kid,
Mhm.
everything was appeared so much more. Does that happen to you? That you look back and everything seems so much more formal and fancy?
Some things did, and other things seemed to be a heck of a lot more laid back, relaxed, and just um, nothing. Nothing was set in stone. Because, like, if a friend came over and knocked on the door, dude, me and Randy are gonna go down to the canal. We're gonna go ride bikes down there. You want to go? I'd be like, yeah, sure. And Mom, I'm going down to the canal, ride bikes with Randy and Frankie. And off we'd go.
Right.
Spontaneity was just right there.
Well,
If anything fun came along, I was a willing participant.
let me
Now,
rephrase.
now I really got to think about it.
Let me rephrase it and see if you have something for this, because the picture that I got for some reason,
Mhm,
we used to have parties,
mhm.
or my parents would, and I'd
Yeah.
just be the little kid walking around the party, and there would be all these adults dressed
Mhm.
in like the 1970s type of, I guess you'd call it evening wear, formal slash
Yeah.
whatever, and they'd have hors d'oeuvres. I couldn't reach the plates or anything, so I
Yeah.
basically was screwed on that level. But I would
Uh-huh.
walk around and see, and I'd fall asleep early, but they'd
Yeah.
have parties and they'd have, like the
Mhm.
little. So it seemed like, wow, this is a thing with adults, and then that stopped as my parents got older.
Well,
As you get
I
older,
think, yeah, that thing kind of went out of style. Now it's more just getting friends over for whatever occasion, be it a birthday or just Saturday night. We want to invite some people over and, but it's not a quote unquote dinner party like used
Right.
to be in the 60s and 70s.
That's what it was, kind of like a get together slash dinner party, and
Hmm.
it seemed formal. I
Yeah,
never.
it was a big deal.
It almost seemed like I experienced as a kid watching a different world than the one that once I was old enough that I experienced. The one that I experienced when I was old enough
Yeah.
was more of, I mean, what do you expect from a boy that's a pre-teenager getting into teenage years, except
Yeah.
the adrenaline that follows? But it seemed more in line with like the Goonies or
Hmm.
the movies like that, like kids running off with bikes, like you were saying.
Yeah.
But
And
never experienced even into the adult thing. There were formal occasions throughout my life, but well, go ahead, go ahead.
right. But now, if you're anything like me, whenever my parents had any kind of a situation like that, a social thing at the house, dinner party or what have you, my interest was in the food. I didn't give a damn about any of the people. I didn't give a damn about any of the music. I didn't give a damn about any of the conversation. I was there for the food. And then I was off in my room doing whatever. I had hot rod magazines and cartoons to read and cartoons to watch. I didn't care about anything else. Just that looks yummy. Give me some of that. Make up a little plate and take off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my parents didn't entertain very much, but and that is totally 100% out of the realm of spontaneity that I
Well,
was
yeah,
talking
that's
about, because that
pre-planning.
had to be planned to the
Yeah.
degree. But I'm kind of like yourself in that I'm not very spontaneous really at all, depending upon the situation. If one of my kids calls and says, "Hey, Dad, we're getting a bunch of people over. You guys want to come over?" Linda and I will probably go.
Okay, that's
Or
already crazy.
Linda's sister or
Yeah.
niece and nephew or something like that. Hey, we're gonna do this. You guys want to come with us? We'll probably go get dressed. Get cleaned up, get dressed, and go.
Yeah.
Um, but our level of spontaneity is our limit has gotten so low on how spontaneous we want to get. About as spontaneous as we get anymore is, you want to go to Dairy Queen and get a Blizzard? Let's
I
go
gotta.
do that. And
Well,
we
let's think
jump in the
about it.
car, go get a Blizzard and come home.
Well,
That's about as spontaneous as we get anymore.
there's a few things involved. Everybody's different,
Mhm.
and everybody's different. But I find it that the older, let's rephrase that, the more experience I gather,
Mhm.
the more I realize, and I've told you this before, the more I realize how diverting from the norm, or the more interactions you have with
Mhm.
people, um, the more room for screwed up things to occur. Not everybody, but then again, we've talked about this where one lives in a big city and you live in a place that's a little bit more, you know, doable as far as like you're not crowded and stuff, so you don't have to. So there's all
Yeah,
that.
we're
It's a
not
funny thing.
super crowded. I mean, your population density is huge. I mean, I'm several miles away from the closest apartment complex, and you're basically surrounded by them. But so yeah, the population density is much lower. I mean, I'm in a town of 8,000 people, so our crime rate goes down at night.
Yeah,
There's only a few streets that have sidewalks to roll up. So
I just, it just, it's a complicated thing because spontaneity and this and that. I think there's a lot of factors involved. But whereas before, I get an idea in my head and I
Mhm.
jump in the car and be down the road.
Yeah.
Now I'll get an idea in my head and I'll think about it for a bit. for a good bit. And I'll
This
strategize it and I'll let it sit for a while and I'll say, yeah, okay, so we're gonna go ahead and do that then, and then I'll execute the plan.
Do you get online and look up, make sure they're open before you go?
Everything,
Yeah,
everything.
the whole that I do the same thing, and it's becoming you tried to put it in a nice way by saying the more experience you get, I'll just flat out say it, the older I get, the less likely I am to go do it unless I really need to. I'll put it to you this way. I've needed to go to the grocery store for about 3 days now, and I might actually go tomorrow,
Well, I mean, you're
but
doing the
only
right thing and
because
thinking of
I'm almost out of things. I've got other things to do. I don't want to be bothered with that. And I know the longer I wait, the longer I'm going to be there because the more stuff I'm going to need to get.
yeah.
You know, I'm low on coffee. And then now also I'm low on creamer. And then now also I'm low on this and that. And I need to get lunch meat. And oh man, I want to get some heavy cream because I'm going to make this. And then, so the longer I put it off, the more stuff I'm going to have to get. So the longer I'm going to be at the damn store. When if I would have gone 3 days ago, I'd have been there and back and done already. You know, so
I'll tell you this. This is interesting. Remember during the pandemic, remember I mentioned that prior to the pandemic, people in Miami would up and slam right into your shoulder as they're passing you by on the in the aisle at the supermarket, or nudge you a couple of times with the cart, or back and forth, and it's
yeah.
just like a free for all. And then the pandemic happened, and people were all of a sudden incredibly distant from each other. I mean, it was wonderful. Well, as of the past few weeks, I've noticed now more carts hitting each other down the aisles. I'm seeing people getting closer to each other. So human beings, it's an example of human beings forgetting
It's complacency. Yeah.
complacency. Yeah.
You know how to stop that, don't you? At least for you, just a little fake cough.
Uh huh.
Just a little fake cough. Sometimes that's enough to make them, oh, wait a minute. This
Yeah.
isn't over.
So it's like
No, no.
it's impossible. Anyway,
Jim Dockerell's got my attitude here. When I get the feeling to do something productive, I usually lie down until that feeling goes away. Yeah, you were talking about you were going to research it and think it through and decide, do I really want to do that? That's where I was going. I try to lay down until that urge to go somewhere passes, or I'll put it off until I absolutely have to go. You
yeah.
know, and it then it becomes a matter of, man, do I really want to do that? And it's a shame too, because there are some things that I used to think were really fun that I would just spontaneously, yeah, let's go do this. Now, it's a pain in the butt. I don't want to go do that.
I used to. I mean, I used to go out all the time on different dates, different events. Um, if a band came up, I'd, oh, okay, let's do it, and it was all very spontaneous.
Well,
But um, it's
something
not.
something like that's a little bit different, because if there was a band or a performer that you really like and really want to see, and you found out they were coming to town and you had the money for tickets. Now, obviously, given you have a few weeks to plan, because I mean, they don't make the announcement that morning, you
Yeah.
know. But even something like that, yeah, I would seriously consider it.
Well, um, to be honest with you, there is no band
Mhm.
today. Uh, I saw Paul McCartney. I saw
Mhm.
Robert Plant as two iconic ones for me.
Mhm.
I saw Guns N' Roses, which was very iconic for me.
Mhm.
I saw, this is where Steve starts like leaning back on his chair. And he starts like, I don't know. Steve came right up into my mind. Um, uh, Let me run through the whole roster. But the point is that I saw all these bands that I could.
Mhm.
I mean, I saw Joe Cocker.
Mhm.
I
But
saw.
you're telling me that if it was announced that AC/DC was going to play in Miami next month, or Metallica or something like that, you wouldn't go.
I saw Metallica 2 or 3 times,
Mhm.
and ACDC I've not seen.
Mhm.
But I don't know that I want to be sitting in a place with a bunch of people. Um,
Well,
I
see,
know.
there's your first problem right there. One does not simply sit at an AC/DC concert. I have seen them live. You don't sit at an AC/DC concert.
Well, you get my point,
That's
right?
how you get trampled.
Well, not if you have a seat designated where you can actually sit your butt down. If you're in the crowd downstairs,
Mhm.
you're in trouble if you're going to sit. But the point is not that. The point is
Yeah,
that
I get you.
I like AC/DC in the earphones.
Hmm. Okay, all right. See, I'd still go see them. I
You'd still
really
go
would.
see AC/DC.
In a hot second, yeah. But they're not going to play a little podunk town like this. I mean, we get guys like Gary Puckett in the Union Gap, where most folks go, "Who?" You know.
The last the last artist that I saw or musician was Bob Dylan.
Yeah. See, I'm trying to think of the last ones we saw together. I think the last one we went to together, or even separately, was we were in Hawaii, and they hook up. A lot of promoters hook up with USO and with the Army Recreation and folks, and it was the Doobie Brothers, Joe Walsh, and Eddie Money,
Mhm.
and that was over in Hawaii, and we went and saw those.
I do not love the Rainy Nights, but the song is good.
That's Eddie Rabbit.
Oh, I always confuse the two. Do a lot of people do that?
I'm guessing, but yeah, we went to saw the Doobies and saw Joe Walsh. I was there for Joe Walsh. We left when Eddie Money came on because I'm just not, 2 tickets to paradise. It's like, dude, don't milk it.
Paradise. No,
No,
that's Jimmy
that was
Buffett.
Jimmy Buffett. Yeah. So
I like mine with lettuce and tomato.
yeah, that's Cheeseburger in Paradise. Jimmy Buffett.
But you
You
see
want
how
to
that.
talk about a performer? Him, I've not seen live, and I'd love to see him live.
Okay,
But
so now here's.
that's another subject.
Okay, no, it's not enough. It is, but no. I
Mhm.
will say this. That's one that I could get my ass up and go and watch
Okay.
because he is such a songwriter
Hmm.
and it's so iconic to Americana history
Hmm.
with a strong sprinkle of Florida,
Yeah,
you know.
that laid back.
Yeah, so it's very meaningful in terms of
Hmm.
for me.
And he goes in all kinds of different directions. I mean, I've got a whole bunch of his albums and what have you. But I mean, he does covers and he does original stuff, and he just goes in all
He's
kinds of
fun
different
to.
directions.
He's a fun
Hmm.
musician to listen
Hmm.
to,
Yeah, he is.
in my
He
opinion.
is.
So,
Yeah, I'll agree with you there.
but if you tell
So
me that Metallica, I already seen them a few times, and I'm
mm,
not gonna sit there with that volume, dude. I don't want that volume. I don't want to. Look, I've said it before, dude. I don't want anything other than a Walmart when I need to go get stuff,
mhm.
internet connection, and
You don't even want Home Depot anymore, huh?
well, Home Depot if I need to fix something, but now that's a negative. Let's not think of.
Yeah, see, priorities change, man. I'm with you.
Mhm.
I'm with you. Every day, I start valuing Amazon more and more. But that's a double-edged sword because when I need something, I usually need it now. I don't need it next week. I can't wait on shipping. I need it now. But being in such a small town has those drawbacks because there's a lot of things you can't find here. You have to order them online. I mean,
Yeah.
this area, there's only 200,000 people in this county. We don't even have an Apple store. The closest Apple store is 275 miles in either direction, either north or south. So if your Apple device breaks, you just got to take it to some local guy and hope like heck they know what they're doing, or you're driving for a while.
Let me ask you this question, and this goes for all of you out there
Mm-hmm.
in your respective areas
Yeah.
across the country, world, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
On a normal venture out across your town, hometown,
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot, in your areas,
Mm-hmm.
how many reasonable smiles and hellos um, can you count on in a general sense?
Smiles all over the place. Smiles, nods, that kind of thing. Yeah. Hellos, it depends on where we're at. If it's the guy next to you in line, there's going to be a little bit of a conversation. The clerk, cash ringing up your order, there's going to be some of that. But just walking past somebody on the bread aisle, it'll be a smile and a nod, and that's about it. There's not really a conversation unless we're both reaching for the same, cinnamon raisin bagels. Then
But
it's
you
like, oh,
expect,
sorry, go ahead. Yeah, you expect some interaction. Yeah.
okay. Now, with that said,
Mm-hmm.
how different could you possibly imagine that would be for a place like Miami?
I think it would depend on the area. Okay. I've never been to Miami. Okay. So I don't know the layout. Now I know you're in one area called Sweetwater, and it's almost kind of like neighborhood there. If you're within your area going to the stores, or do you kind of, like, for instance, when you go into the grocery store you go to the most often, are there certain cashiers you will go to and certain cashiers you avoid?
I only can take into consideration the line.
Okay, all right, so you're not really known in an area. Not
I mean
really.
that
It's
I'm
still pretty anonymous. Okay.
that that I'm aware. When we were kids, that wasn't the case.
Mm-hmm. Because I'm thinking, if with that many people, if you're not really known as quote unquote a regular customer to this place, then I would say probably not too many, because everybody's got their own thing they got to do and they want to get in, get out, and get gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like every other person in the store is an obstacle keeping me away from those cinnamon raisin bagels. And let me get my bagels and get the hell out.
Yeah, get away from my bagels.
Yeah. So
Yeah, well, so no, well, point being, I do remember when it was a little bit more comfy or warm-ish type,
yeah.
and then it ballooned up into a massive
Yeah.
metropolis of inconceivable I mean, it's overwhelming. So
Well,
yeah,
that's
you're in
that's
an
part of that whole urban sprawl kind of thing, because you didn't live in Miami. Miami kind of moved out to where you are.
I didn't cross. Wait, huh? I didn't cross the border. The border crossed me.
Yeah. Yeah, really. And that's what it, yeah.
Yeah,
Steve C says Paul Simon is like that. If he were coming, I'd go. Would you go see Paul Simon? I know you're a fan.
I'm a huge Paul Simon fan. Um, would I go? Yeah, for some reason Jimmy Buffett excited me more, but yeah, but I've seen Paul Simon. He looks tired too. I don't think even Paul Simon would go.
So, and let's eliminate the obstacles. You have the time, you have the money, you're not going to be busy that day, and buying a ticket is not an issue.
Yeah, I'd go see him.
You go see him? Okay.
Yeah, Paul Simon. That's an iconic. That's iconic for me. The songwriting, and I was turned on to Paul Simon through my aunt, which, because she grew up in the era, so she had the cassettes and the tapes and the whatnots, and she'd play it whenever we'd go somewhere, this or that, and I was exposed to that music. I musically, I have a lot to thank because if not, I would have probably, I did exploring on my own, but that kind of helped open up my mind to like Paul Simon and all sorts of different bands. Whereas I would listen to rock and roll of my friends and peers and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I'm with you there. Okay. Steve has qualified his statement. I'm willing to go out for the second coming, but don't bother me until then. Okay. Well, we all have that line. So, And Steve makes an interesting point here. He says it depends on your mood. If you're smiling, they'll smile too. Now, I take it that's in your area. But there's a lot to be said for that, because I've noticed that here in this small hometown kind of thing, where, we go to the grocery store, and if I'm kind of looking up or looking around or scanning the aisle or something like that, I guess I appear to be more open or approachable or something like that. And people will do the smile and nod or even a little wave or something like that. But if I'm looking down and like I'm focused, I'm on a mission, maybe I don't notice, but or I notice as much as I think I would, but I don't see as many smiles and I don't see as many acknowledgments or waves. Maybe it's kind of like, oh, he's busy, get out of the way. I don't know if that's the case or not.
Mm. Yeah,
But yeah, and I imagine your body language and your the attitude that you
I am not approachable. Like
portray.
my face does not say, "Hey, come close. I want to have a chat with you." That's not my. I'm
Well,
going to.
neither does mine, but I mean that doesn't mean that somebody, I'm not gonna, I'm pushing my cart down the aisle and I look up to, okay, mushrooms. I want to get those mushrooms right there. And I turn around and look, and there's some other lady going, can you reach that on the top shelf? Sure. No
Yeah, I'll
worries.
do that kind of
You
stuff.
know,
That's
but
not a problem. Like I was taught to be polite, but
mhm,
it became so negative everywhere. And that sounds like complaining also, but it is. I'm not the only one. Like when I talk to friends and family,
mhm,
they express the same darn thing. They grew up here. They throughout the eras,
mhm,
and it's really multiplied down here. And with
mhm,
it comes an anonymity and
mhm.
a certain detachment that you've spoken of this evening. And
Now, detachment is a good word. I hadn't thought of that word. Now, how much of that do you think we bring on ourselves? Because, like I said, in my situation, if I'm kind of, like I said, looking down or I'm focused or I'm reading a list, I'm giving the perception that I don't want to be bothered. I'm on a mission from dog. Let me go. And how much of that do you think we actually bring on ourselves
well,
when we're,
we're part of it
yeah.
because we're human beings that adapt to our surroundings, and we're part of. When you walk into a place,
Hmm.
just the sheer fact that you're a human being, whether it's a place you're familiar with or not, you're or conscious of it or not, you're looking at clues of what the herd is doing and how they're performing in order for you to accordingly. Now you could be um you know set apart and you can do your, but generally speaking, people sort of try to blend in and do their thing within the blending in of the norms of the establishment that you're in. I
Sure.
mean, you don't walk into a pizza place um in your birthday suit with a rubber ducky.
Well, now don't say that, because you can do anything once. So, and it just, so you have to qualify that. I haven't done that yet, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, no, but we do try to sort of
Hmm.
like stick to a certain normality and stuff. So if people are being jerk offs,
Hmm.
can you say that out loud? That's
Well, you
something like
just did, but yeah.
that's something from back in the day. I don't know why
Hmm.
it popped into my mind all of a sudden. If you're being a jerk,
Hmm.
minus the off,
Hmm.
um, if people are being, then you're going to sort of take a cue from that and say, well, this isn't a place where you're going to necessarily want to meet and greet with folks. This is
Sure.
more like get what you need.
Understood.
And so, yeah, you adapt.
Well, because what I thought was interesting was you said it wasn't just you. You've had family members say the same thing.
Hmm.
And so it used to be a warmer place, and it was nicer and this, that, and the other, and folks were friendlier towards one another. But yet, as you just admitted, we all adapt and start running with the rest of the herd. So when we see other people doing that, we
Hmm.
do it ourselves. But then we later complain that, well, everybody's so cold. But we're a part of that everybody, and we're cold when we go out. I do the same thing. I'm not projecting onto you,
Hmm. No,
but
well, I'm aware. I mentioned that that's correct
yeah.
because we're a part
Mhm.
of the tribe. We cross tribes.
Hmm.
Like we're layers. We're a part of a huge tribe called the human family tribe. So, if you see another human, generally speaking, it depends. I mean, there's
Hmm.
people that'll think all sorts of things, but I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that in a broad way, a good majority of people, if they see someone from some unknown country,
Hmm.
but they recognize, oh, this is a human being with two legs and they have eyes and
Yeah.
look, they have hair. Like you got okay, so that's part of the human. So you have sort of like this thing. It doesn't mean you're gonna go have lunch, dinner, and breakfast with the darn person, but you
No.
recognize that there's a that you're part of. If you're in a location that's foreign to you,
Hmm.
you recognize that humans are doing such things in this area. You may not be conscious of it, but you likewise start to adapt to the thing, and you might even have confrontations in terms of like, well, this is stupid. Why do the people here do this or that? But you still try, in a general sense, to you could fight it, but at the end of the
Well,
day,
yeah.
you sort of like fall into, and so then they're little overlapping microcosms of, I guess, tribal things that fall under the bigger umbrella of humans. And when in Rome,
Yeah, you have to adapt because it's like going into a restaurant the first time. You
yeah,
don't know, do we just go in and sit down, or is this one of those places where we have to wait for the host or hostess to come along and seat us?
that's a good example.
You know, the bill came, do we take it up to the register, or do they come and collect the money and take it to the register?
Right.
So you have to kind of watch and adapt to, all right, I see they picked up their bill and they've gone and paid for it. That's how we do it here. All
You know
right.
what's funny about that?
Mm-hmm.
That so there's situations where like you're at a buffet,
Mm-hmm.
and some buffets, even within the category of buffet eating experiences, you have those two options. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
there's a waitress that comes to you or waiter that comes to you in order to do the money
Mm-hmm.
thing. But sometimes it's the other thing that you said where you just have to walk to the register,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a fine line of feeling really stupid of doing the wrong thing within
Yeah.
the crowd, and those things are little pressure points that we're keenly aware of or subconsciously aware of anywhere we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like for instance,
Yeah.
well, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you 100% because I mean every place has their own little. I mean there are other buffets where you walk in the door and they say how many. You say okay, 3 adults and 2 kids under 13. Okay, fine, and then they charge you right there before you ever go in and get your table.
Hmm.
And then whatever you do after that, you've paid. You just you know run wild, knock yourself out. Just don't
Maybe
waste a lot of food, please.
I think this is a good line to maybe there's something there. Weird establishment experiences where you're not quite sure what to or what not to do. If there's any that I'll lead off. Well, go ahead and read off,
Oh
Robin.
no, I was just going to throw that on there. You gone to the washroom? Will I remember the way back in the restaurant? Yeah. Well, if it's that big, yeah. But now I will admit there are some places where I have gotten it's so dark, I have gotten so turned around. I come walking out the door and yeah, I've got to get my bearings. And it's like, well, it's dark outside. There's no landmarks out there. That's not any help. Which the hell way were we? Oh, there they are over there. All right, fine.
Yeah, parking lots are problematic because there's so
No,
many.
I meant inside.
Oh,
Come out of the bathroom and it's like, where the hell were we sitting? Oh, there we are.
but you've gotten lost in a parking lot before, right?
Oh God, yes. Oh God, yes.
What?
Um,
Oh, go ahead.
the worst one was Oakland Coliseum at a Day on the Green concert in the 70s, and it was about 20 minutes before we found the car.
Did
Just
you do a lot of?
walking around. We went out the wrong exit
Well,
out
that'll
of the
do it.
stadium.
Yeah.
And we thought we were headed in the right direction, and the more we walked, the further away we got, and we had to kind of land nav our way back
That's
and
hilarious.
get to. But I was 16, 17 at the time. I really didn't care. That was all part of the adventure. So
Well,
you
one
know
time with my aunt, I don't know what appointment we needed to go to and stuff, but I remember it was my aunt. We went to one of those garages that are covered
uh-huh.
and are multi-layered,
Yeah.
and we parked and we went into the office and whatnot. And after whatever, I forget even what the appointment was over or whatever, we went, got in the car.
Mhm.
No, yeah, we went and got in the car because we remembered exactly where we parked. But trying to get out of there,
Yeah.
we kept going and we could never find that off ramp. Man, we went around, and after we did it like 3 or 4 times going around trying to figure out what's going on here because it wasn't apparent, we
Mhm.
started just laughing. So we were going around in a cover just cracking up because we're so
Look,
darn
kids,
dumb that we can't figure
Parliament,
it out.
Big Ben. Look, kids, Parliament, Big Ben. Chevy Chase and the National Lampoon Vacation. The closest I ever came to anything like that was trying to make a left turn in San Francisco. When you were in San Francisco, did you drive?
Yes, I remember that I had to turn. I was told by the lady I was with that I had to turn the wheels to, how was it, inward so that it would fall back when you're going up.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. But there are areas of San Francisco where you just cannot make a left turn.
right. You have to go
Forget it.
way around. Yeah,
Well, that's where the old saying comes in: two wrongs don't make a right, three rights make a left. You would actually make make a right turn, go to the end of that block, make another right turn, make another right turn at the end of that block, and then go straight across when the light turned.
yeah.
So three rights make a left.
Chinatown
You
was weird.
you can't make a left turn in San Francisco. So
Yeah, Chinatown was weird because everything was so steep in my recollection, and the stores were built that way along the sidewalk, and it was all tiered like up going up the hill, and it was just such a strange thing for a person that's not used to that.
Robin says one time I came out of the drugstore and our car was pulled up to the door. I got in the car and it was some random guy. Random guy. It just happened to look like our car, and I was like,
Wow,
"Oops."
that's crazy. Stuff like that happens. I mean, because we're involved in whatever we're thinking about, and this and that, and
There was a comedian. I can't remember her name. She was on some TV show I was watching. She was talking about just she was with her boyfriend, and they could not find a parking spot at this store. So he just said, "Well, go in and get what you need, and I'll drive around."
mm-hmm.
And I'll come along and hop in. So she went in, she got her stuff, and she came out, and she saw the car coming, and it pulled up and it stopped in front of the doors, and she hopped in the back seat and decided to play the go get out of here,
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
And car took off, and she looked, and it was some poor old lady in the driver's seat. Her eyes were about that big around. She thought that she was being carjacked.
That is hilarious.
Then she does, "Oh, no, stop, please, stop." So
That's so funny, dude.
wrong car. So yeah. Okay, Linda said no, the worst was the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. Yeah, but I knew where the car was. I was in it. Now, I'm not going to ask if anybody has ever driven around the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, but if you ever find yourself in Paris driving up the Champs-Elysees, don't do it. It is absolute insanity. Don't do it. It's just don't do it.
That's crazy.
It
I've seen.
is absolutely crazy. It's a huge traffic circle all going in one direction. And after we got to our hotel and parked, we went back out there, and I stood on the curb and I counted. They were 15 cars deep, all going in a circle at 40 miles an hour.
It's
And
insane.
when the guy 4 cars in wanted to turn right to get out of that circle, he just honked his horn and turned right. And you either slowed down or sped up to make room for him. It was a free for all.
It's insanity.
It was absolute insanity. So
I think we owe.
Mhm.
I mean, as much as we owe Napoleon's layout of cities um, to
Yeah.
Napoleon.
Well, we owe that to Napoleon because that was a triumphal arch that he had put up for his win against, I don't remember who, but oh my gosh.
But we do have roundabouts, but that's kind of like an exaggeration.
Yeah, but we're newbies when it comes to roundabouts. I mean, and I don't know what the attitude in Miami about a roundabout is, but
We have
out
a couple
here,
of them.
it's like it's foreign to us. I mean, we'll do it if we have to, but it's like, oh my God, these people are just too cheap to put up a traffic light. Why do you got to try? We're not Europe. Quit trying to be Europe. Knock it off. We
It
out here, we kind of see them as unnecessary pretentiousness.
it's supposed to be better for traffic flow.
That's what they say, but I mean, that's not what the attitude out here is.
Right.
The attitude is this is unnecessary pretentiousness. You're trying to be European. You're not European. Stop it.
We
You
have a
know,
couple of them. We have one in Sweetwater, believe it or not.
I think we have two in the entire valley. There may be more than that, but I only know of two.
Yeah.
So it's
I mean,
just, I mean, whatever.
you have to be aware of what's happening. So it's not like
Well, I think the major problem with them is in this country, and we've really gotten off. You wanted to go somewhere else, but
Did I?
yeah, you wanted to talk about the difference in restaurants and the
Oh,
protocols and what
no,
have
that's
you. But
fine. Where we
this
go?
is way out of the off the track. I think the biggest problem with roundabouts in the U.S. is that most people don't know what to do. And so they're afraid to do anything. They're hesitant to do anything because they're just not sure what to do. Because it's not something we face every day.
That sounded ominous. Nothing. When you approach the frickin' roundabout, if somebody's in it already and they're in front of you, or just right, like you can cut in front of them, don't do it. Let them pass by and then you go.
Yeah. Well, but that makes sense to you and me because we've got experience with them. They're all over in Europe, and Linda, before we went to Germany, she had about I think maybe a year and a half of experience driving. She learned to drive later in life.
Mhm.
And we got over to Germany and she learned how to drive German. Then it was, sit down, strap in, shut up, and hold on, and that was all because that's the way they drive over there. They drive with
Yeah.
a purpose. If you're going to drive. And so roundabouts are a way of life over there. But
Yeah.
over here, most folks, they're not as common as they are over there. So I really honestly think most folks just don't know what to do. So there's some trepidation there. It's kind of like, what do I do now? Because nobody wants to be wrong.
I see Portal doesn't have too much of a like care for
Yeah,
roundabouts
there's no
himself.
love for them. Yeah, they're putting those stupid things all over down here. Yeah, I mean they're coming and we're powerless to do anything about it. They'll put them where they want to, but
I mean, if you think about it, the United States, look, add more roundabouts to America, to European up the place.
mhm,
We're a little bit, we're a little bit behind the curve here, no pun
mhm,
intended.
mhm.
And let's bring into fashion berets.
Well, you can wear a beret right now.
Traditionally I would, if I were where my grandparents and their grandparents were, I would wear a beret,
Mhm.
not much unlike that of the French, because that's what they wear. They wear berets in those places.
They're up in northern Spain, up in Santander.
Yeah, well, they do everywhere.
Uh-huh.
Not everybody uses it, but like in olden times,
Mm-hmm.
the beret was a hat.
I don't know. I see you as more of a flat cap guy, the roadster cap.
I can wear a roadster cap.
Yeah, I see you more like that. Okay, Steve C says, the good Lord gave me two forward-facing eyes so that I could judge speed as it relates to time over distance. I can nail a roundabout without even slowing down. Okay.
See, that
Okay.
sounds like an aggressive driver to me. Heads
Well,
up.
yeah, and I can confirm that because Billy came along and said there are 7 roundabouts in San Antonio and they're designed to force drivers to slow down. To which Steve replied, only the ones who sit while they pee, Billy. But Steve, remember, when you're going through that roundabout, you're sitting.
See that if you draw that out, that is symptomatic of all our problems in America.
What's that?
One guy wants to take it to the limit, the other guy wants to be fairly cautious.
Mhm.
There's no in between.
Yeah.
First
Well,
gear.
there is in between. There is in between. I mean, the older I've gotten, the more likely I am to do the speed limit, or maybe 5 miles an hour over. But when I was 16, 17, if I wasn't doing 50, I was in the drive-through. It didn't matter where I was. If I was out on the freeway, it was 70 to 75. And that was back when the speed limits were 55 mandatory.
I
But
don't wanna bring this up, but I would be the last person to have thought that Billy would, and I know it's not an extreme cuss word, but to say tush on air, I
no,
don't know.
that's touche.
I
That
know.
was okay.
I was trying to,
He
yeah.
was trying to relate it to your beret.
I was trying to, like, it's what is it called, self deprecating, but yet
Mhm.
funny. Whatever.
Okay.
Can't have any. You can't do anything anymore.
No, you can't. You can't do anything more. But why would you want to?
And nobody
It's
liked it. The tush, touche, whatever.
mhm. Well, ZZ Top did. Linda said speed limits are just a suggestion. Yeah, there was a time that you thought that. I know because I was your passenger several times. I mean, she went from learning how to drive. I taught her to drive a manual transmission, stick shift, and got over to Germany, and she got a Mercedes with a stick shift, and she was the Autobahn queen, man. And I
That's crazy.
kid you not, Speed Racer and Barney Oldfield all in one. I mean, just boom. So,
Yeah.
but she became a very good driver, and that because they take driving very, very seriously over there. Well, they've got a limited amount of space, so they don't want everybody driving, so they make it very expensive. So just to get and this was in 88, 89, just to get your driver's license from the day you decided I'm going to get my driver's license to the day you got your driver's license, it was right at about $1,500. And then getting a car was expensive. Maintaining the car was expensive. It has to go through an annual inspection where they put it in on the rack and they basically take half of it apart. They measure how much brake pad you have on. They look for rust and corrosion. I mean, and then they put it all back together. And if the car fails that inspection, it doesn't move. They take the license plates off of it, and you have two choices. You can either pay them to fix it, or you can have your mechanic come pick it up and take it. But it did not drive out of that complex. So most people had them fix it because they were cheaper than most mechanics. But
you couldn't drive a screwed up car.
Nope, absolutely not.
You could not drive a screwed up car in Germany.
Nope.
So every car is pristine.
Well, I won't say pristine, but it's in much better condition. I would say probably 1/3 of the cars on the road here in America would not be on the road in Germany. I mean, they, turn on the lights. They don't just look to make sure all the lights are working. They have a little meter they walk up and they put it a certain distance away from the headlight and make sure it's bright enough. If it's not bright enough, fail. And they go around to all of them, check fog lights, check turn signals. Everything has to be working. And I mean, oh my God, did they really go, if there's a crack in your windshield, doesn't matter where it's in, failed.
That's all there is to
it. Linda says when she bought her Mercedes, they failed it because it had rust in the floor pan next to the frame. And that was considered a weak spot. It was unsafe. She had to take it to a mechanic who cut out that section of floor and replaced it, and then took it back and had it inspected, and it passed.
You know what I think about all that?
See,
I think it's too much involvement, too much government oversight.
The point is, they don't want everybody driving because it'd be too many people on the road. So they make it expensive to own a car. They make it expensive to maintain a car, but they have excellent public transportation. They want you to use public transportation. So it's only about the upper 50% of income levels that actually own a decent car.
I'm gonna juxtapose that with a video that I saw.
Okay.
There's a video. There's a guy, American guy that goes around the world
Mm-hmm.
and does. We've talked about it where they do series of involved with different cities across the world and how the people are, and he just walks with them and talks with them, drives with them, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But he's lately been doing a series where it's all about the native peoples of the United States.
Okay.
And he's gone through all the northwestern places.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think he started in Texas and then went up to the. And part of that is he visits with some cowboys,
Mm-hmm.
which aren't mutually exclusive. But in this case, it was one guy
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in Montana, in the middle of nowhere, open fields as far as the eye can see, and then mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like 90 something years old,
Mm-hmm.
living alone in his cottage in the middle of Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Don't you get bored?" This and that. He said, "No."
Yeah.
He was born in America, and his father, who was born like in 18 something or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, was born in Norway, and his father came over
Mm-hmm.
and fought in World War One, and then the son, was born like 1920 something, and alive and kicking. Gets on his tractor, the whole 9 yards. Point being, he's out in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
His yard had crap from here to eternity,
Mm-hmm.
and he did whatever the hell he wanted.
Right.
He had a method to his madness,
Mm-hmm.
but none of this sort of like, there's a word for it. Starts with the letter A, ends
Mm-hmm.
with null.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think when you say the inspection and this and that and the whole thing.
Well, they do it to deter people from driving because, like I said, they don't want everybody on the road because for various reasons. There are just too many people in too small of an area.
Yeah, I
So
understand that.
So they and Europe is big on this. They tax behavior they want to discourage heavily and either reduce or remove taxes on behavior they want to encourage. And we do the same thing here, but to a lesser extent. You know,
Well,
they put a heavy tax on tobacco because they don't want people to smoke or dip or do whatever. But there are no taxes on most food items unless it's prepared food because that's a basic need. You have to have food to survive, so they don't tax that. If you're putting part of your income in a retirement account, you don't pay taxes on that income because they want to encourage you to save for your retirement, you know. So they'll tax the income as you take it out and as you use it after you've retired, and they tax it at a lower rate. So we do the same thing. It's just they do it, they go overboard there in their taxation.
well, I think that they go overboard here, but in comparison,
Mm-hmm.
I see that there's a big
Mm-hmm.
difference in terms of how acute it is. But
But but they are taxed on everything. You're taxed on the number of rooms you have in your house, for instance, and closets count as rooms, so they don't have separate closets. A bedroom is 4 walls with a window and a door, and then you bring a wardrobe in. That's where you hang your clothes. There are no closets unless it's a very wealthy person. Then they'll have closets. You're taxed on the number of televisions you have. You're taxed on the number of, used to be taxed on the number of radios and stereos and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And they do that for various reasons, but mainly it's to discourage certain activity and encourage other activity.
Yeah, I don't like that concept
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
Um, I know that I am a product of many things in my particular area and whatnot, but there's an overarching sense of rebellion against all that
Yeah.
internally, like a welling up of, and I think that that's it's not just an American thing, but from an American vantage point, the idea of maybe it's just my vantage point, and I share it with a bunch of people that are American. I don't want to speak for all Americans, but I think it has something to do with our foundation saying "screw you,"
and
because
and
because
that's a concept they really don't get over there. They don't understand why we have that. That's foreign to them.
yeah,
They don't understand that. um I can only speak to Germany because that's what I'm most experienced with. But then again, I have to qualify that and say that this was also 40 years ago. This was in the 80s. Okay.
yeah,
So a lot of things may have and probably have changed. We left just after the Germany's reunified. We were there when the Berlin Wall came down. We were there when they reunified, and we left in January of 92. Got there in 88 and left in 92.
but
So a lot had to have changed. But
go ahead.
that concept that you're talking about less interference, smaller government, and our own independence, that's foreign to them.
Well, that's what I wanted to. Well, go ahead, go ahead. See.
It and it comes down to the culture in that they are taught that is normal, that is the norm. And there's a reason for everything they do, and they may not always know the reason, but they have this type of mentality. For instance, it's illegal for you to go out and mow your lawn on a Sunday. You can't do it because there are so many people in such a small area. They value privacy and quiet times, and you are disturbing people when you're out there doing that kind of work. So they say on Sunday, nobody, you don't mow your lawn, you're not out, pressure washing your car or doing a lot of loud work.
Mhm.
On Saturday, before I think it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're fine. But after 4 o'clock, quiet hours.
Yeah,
You don't disturb your neighbors.
yeah. Are you trying to just continuously build and weld up in me more and more resentment towards authority?
No, I mean, and that's the way it is. Because, well, for instance, you're a case where you have that one neighbor who plays their music super, super loud.
Mhm.
He would have been in jail long time ago, and that equipment would have been confiscated because he's disturbing the entire neighborhood. Now, if it's Friday afternoon before 5 o'clock and he's playing it real loud and there are no complaints from the neighbors, they'll let it go. But after a certain time in the evening, and it's different hours on Saturdays and it's all day Sunday, he'd have been told one time, turn it off now. If you can hear it outside of your home, it's too loud.
Mhm.
One time he'd have been told, you get one warning. And then after that, you're under arrest and they confiscate the equipment.
Okay,
They are serious over there about stuff like that.
I'm getting that sense.
If
You're
you
making
get a
it perfectly.
if you get a
No,
parking ticket, you
you're
have
making it.
30 days to pay that fine.
You're
On
just
day
you're just
31, there's an officer at the door.
you're just chucking wood
I'm serious, man.
you're just adding more like you're building it. Um, boy, that's well. How can I put it this way?
But they're raised to where that's the norm. So,
Yeah, I love the full circle. Everything about that
mhm.
angers me side with deep, like, but like deep, um, like I'm not irrational.
Mm-hmm.
So like I did say when in Rome and whatnot and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're gonna like, let's say you inject yourself into a society, you're gonna follow
Mm-hmm.
its rules
Yeah.
because whatever,
Yeah.
you're not gonna be a jerk and stuff, and there's respect and whatnot, and people have their ways and whatnot. But it still pisses me freaking off. And I'll tell you this, um, what I don't understand is that this is coming from a place, Europe, broadly
Mm-hmm.
speaking, where they chopped freaking um people's heads off in terms of
But,
royalty
mm-hmm.
because they overstepped the bounds in terms of population. Like in England, there was one um
Mm-hmm.
king that they chopped his freaking head off.
Mm-hmm.
The parliamentarians came and said he's messing with your. We're going the way of freedoms and such, and the people were all pro. And what it turns out to be that it all turned into a complacency scenario. Now in the United States, it's likewise
Mm-hmm.
in a certain way, but there is a big difference even
Yeah.
so. But the idea of what they, meaning authorities that be,
Mm-hmm.
would want or not want, or care for or not care for when considering the citizen, in my mind, by hook or crook, as wrong or right as it may be, as reality or not reality as it might be. And it's unfortunate because the more I've experienced and learned, the more I realize certain realities. But whether wrong or right, it's like, no, the citizen is the ultimate. Now I know there's practicality,
Right.
but the citizen is the ultimate, top of the line. I know this is not the practical and actual,
But
but the go ahead.
the interesting part of this is it's the people that want it this way. It's the people that want it this way. The majority of the people, let's put it that way, because most of these things are voted on. At least in Germany. Like I said, I can only speak to Germany.
Yeah.
But they are, uh, and I won't say all of them, but most of their laws on socially, as far as people getting along and what have you, were put there because the people wanted them there.
Yeah.
For instance, all stores close at the same time every evening. The people wanted it that way because the smaller mom and pop stores felt they couldn't compete with the bigger stores who could afford to pay employees to stay open until 9 o'clock at night. So the people were trying to control the bigger stores and said, no, we want everybody to close at 5 o'clock in the evening. So they voted on it. It was a referendum, and sure enough, that's the way it is now. All stores close at 5 o'clock, or 5:30, I think it is, in the evening, and that's just it.
Yeah.
But the people wanted it that way.
There's a fine line between, we do live in a society where there's the need for certain structure and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. If not, we wouldn't have any structure, and it would be
Yeah.
a total mess, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Maybe not. I don't know, but that is the purpose of government, to keep it glued up,
Mm-hmm.
to a certain degree, for defense and so on. But they don't stay in their lane because power, a person placed into a position where they have leeway because of their position, have the freedom to be heavy-handed without consequence a lot of the times.
And
And if you compound that across this machine we call the government, you get an increasing amount of crap that people put up with and accept and become complacent with, except for people that come from places. I'm a first generation American, but except for people that come from places, and my parents taught me,
mm-hmm.
that saw an overreach. And people here will even fight you on it. I've noticed. I said, no, this is the United States of America. There's no way, and this and that, with such confidence, and at the same time, one is observing all sorts of screwed up. There's nothing we can do necessarily as individuals, as we're just little pieces in a greater machine, and we're not animals, right? It's
Mhm.
not like we're going to go and
Well,
complain in the town square and kick our feet like a little kid. But
well,
we see um, something laid out in front of us. Me as a first generation American, I stress that because it is a unique position where I I I learned from my parents the loss of country, the loss of a lot of things. I mean,
mhm.
imagine walking to the airport because you're leaving the country that's lost freedoms, and your fellow citizens are spitting at you on a line going towards the airplane, and people are spitting at you and calling
Mhm.
you worm and calling you, all these things, and you're leaving a place not knowing what the heck's going to happen in the other place. You just know that the other place has freedom, but you have nothing other than the expectation of, let's see what happens. And you're doing that with your family members and so on. So that kind of experience, although I did not experience it, but just as a derivative of their experience, um, and then watching. So, so anytime I hear
Well,
anything of that nature, I think of the heavy handedness of people in power.
well, think about the country that I'm talking about. We're talking about Germany. What was it before?
Oh, yeah, way worse.
You want to talk about government overreach. You want to talk about totalitarian regimes. I mean, yeah, I'm not diminishing anything that your parents or grandparents went through, but they weren't being bombed and they weren't, under the threat of being taken to a concentration camp because somebody else said that they were of a certain religion. I'm not diminishing anything that they went through at all. But
Yeah,
these people, believe me, they know totalitarian regimes.
yeah, but
So
you can't compare.
no,
You can't.
I'm not trying to compare, but what I'm getting at is they understand a totalitarian regime. They've lived in one. So what they did was, and they were smart to do this, is they put their constitution. You think our constitution is wild? Their constitution has put such strict limits on what their governments can and cannot do. It's a wonder it's allowed to function at all. So they're basically their hands are tied without the will of the people. And it may sound like a lot of overreach to us with their taxation and this, that, and the other, but almost 100% of it is something that the people have demanded and the people have wanted and they
Yeah.
have voted on.
So
So,
so yeah. So I understand the history,
so
but you can't necessarily, and you did, but you can't necessarily make a. So look. So if you're a person in Cuba,
mhm.
and you could detach it and you could say scenario, but since I'm trying to make a point with Cuba, because you said, there's a difference. Yeah, there's differences everywhere. You can't
Oh
compare
yeah,
someone.
there's a huge difference. But
You
yeah,
can't compare someone in China, like that one group that's
mhm.
been put in concentration camps
Right,
and are still there, now, according to
right.
what and their situation, and say, well, you know what, at least you're not a Jew in Auschwitz, to that person.
No, no, no. And I wasn't trying to make that comparison. Please don't think I was.
No, 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 but I want to make a broad point,
Okay.
because a lot of people do look. Cuba wasn't bombed
Mhm.
by, like, Hiroshima.
Right.
um they didn't experience what what one group experiences.
Mhm.
You can always compare it to something else, and
Sure. Well,
layer it. But to lose family and home,
mhm.
and you're the one experiencing it, um that's meaningful to you and your people. And there's a
Sure.
thing, but there's other atrocities, and there's
Sure.
many atrocities. But, like, to say it's not the same thing, and they they opted in Germany for a certain thing.
Mhm.
Um, but they liberated themselves from the previous thing.
Mhm.
That's not the case with Cuba for
No,
the
you're
past
right.
60 years.
My only point was that the people in Germany know what a totalitarian regime is like, and they
Not
are the ones.
not for the last 70 years or more.
Right, but what I'm getting at was the Constitution was put in place by those people who did live under it.
Well, I'm sure they've
And
adapted it as time goes on. But
no,
they have that but
it was put into place in 1946.
well, I'm sure they have a parliament where they
Yeah.
they 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 update things and stuff. But
Hmm.
the point is, as horrible as that was,
Hmm.
you can't compare it to any other thing. I mean, you can in a different scenario. You can do whatever you want, but my point is this: that these people in Cuba
Hmm.
are still under that system. They haven't even
Well,
had the option to decide if they want to have
I
a
understand that.
system. A system like Germany and Cuba would be leaps and bounds
I
beyond
understand that.
compare. So,
And I wasn't trying to say that it wasn't. My only point was that yes, they understand what a totalitarian regime is like. That was my only point in even bringing that up. But
and
they are the ones who are imposing these restrictions on themselves, is what
my
I'm saying.
retort was,
Mhm.
ironically, they've had something different than the Nazi occupation for the
Mhm.
past since 1940 whatever,
Right.
since 1959 to this
Mhm.
day right now in our hemisphere.
Mhm.
They're still under that situation that they can speak of immediately. This
Yeah.
isn't something that happened
And
in 19
they need to overthrow it. I mean, and
well
nobody can do it but them. And
well
that's the sad part.
well here's the thing, that it would be better to
Mhm.
have a system even like, because there's a sliding scale,
Sure.
to have a system like Germany,
Mhm.
um, where there's actual some sort of, but over here there's no human rights as a basic foundation. So that's an extreme level.
Yeah.
But both those things, if you look at what the Hitler thing
Mhm.
was towards the Jews, and
Mhm.
just frankly, even towards like the anybody they didn't like the whole idea,
Yeah.
um, just all of it, the fascism, and so that's not an acceptable scenario. And a lot of people paid the piper,
Mhm.
because they opposed that system.
Mhm.
So there's people always opposing and stuff. I
Yeah.
wasn't suggesting, and I'm not trying to fault you with the thing. I had no, I had no other recourse but to defend the scenario that,
Yeah.
hey, these people are still in that situation.
And I defend, and I'm with you 100%. Okay. And
Yeah,
don't
no,
think
no,
I'm
no. I
not.
know you are. I know you are.
Okay.
But if you're the one involved in it, and I'm not, I'm a
Mhm.
second. I'm
Yeah.
a derivative. But if you're the one involved in it,
Mhm.
it means everything to you.
Oh, sure. Understood.
And because of my closeness to it, one generation removed, and I'm not trying to add like any sort of sense of, I'm just intellectually, and yes, there might be a little bit of passion, but
Mhm.
I'm not blaming, I mean, you at all. I'm just saying that the scenario, I want to make it clear that
Right.
that it's my parents that left that
Right.
place.
Right.
It's not
But
my grandparents or their grandparents. It's not something that happened in 1853. I know that World War II did not happen in that time, but my point is that due to that effect,
Mhm.
and for whatever reason, plus the educational system in America, US,
Mhm.
my sense, and maybe it's just me, but I'm sure there's millions and millions of Americans that feel the same, is to push away from any sort of like heel at the back of your neck
Mhm.
from a power source such as government, and have more of an individual leeway. I'm not opposed to structure either,
Mhm.
but I don't like abuse.
Okay, but a government overreach. My point in this is that government overreach is in the eye of the beholder. If the people want a certain thing, that's what they want. The people of Cuba don't want what they've got. I understand that. I get it. But we were talking about everything I mentioned about Germany, about taxation and restriction and everything, made you know, more and more against it. And what I'm saying
Mhm.
is, this is all self-imposed. This is how they want it. They this is how they want their society to uh, thrive, build, and function.
Let me interject one bit here.
Hmm.
There's an item that's also, which we're both aware of, all of us
Hmm.
out there are aware of, but within the conversation, that's also important.
Hmm.
All things being equal,
Hmm.
with the ability of government to increase their um, expectations of the citizen and
Hmm.
whatnot via taxation or order or whatever. With all that taken into consideration in the different parts of the world, countries and whatnot,
Hmm.
we do have at least a base level thing called the Constitution and Bill of
Hmm.
Rights that are a set of items that cannot be stripped of the individual
Hmm.
citizen. And that baseline protection, in my opinion, is almost everything in the United States. Without
Hmm.
that, without um, a constitution and Bill of Rights that enshrine that concept of, I can go this far with you, Mark,
Hmm.
but not further than that,
Right.
even though I have all the power invested, you know, due to the democratic process. There's a certain line that I can't cross.
Right.
That idea is the
Hmm.
saving grace, in my opinion, of this
Hmm.
country, because left to their own devices without that legal barrier, I mean, they'd
Well,
have us in
sure,
chicken
but
coops with
and
thermometers up our butts and testing whether our
and
temperature goes up, you know.
and most of Western civilization is that way, to varying degrees. I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah.
laws are different and cultures are different and societies are different. But you know, there are um huge differences in just cultural norms and cultural situations and in our societies. You know, we don't compare in any way, shape, manner, or form to any country in Europe or to Europe as a whole. We are completely different society. I mean, pick any English speaking country. We're as different as Alabama is from New York City. We're as different as Canada is from Cambodia. We're all completely different. We all have a different culture, a different way of speaking, a different manner of dress. We carry ourselves differently. And we have each set up our societies to be run the way we think we want them to be run. And if you're right in that if we leave too much of a loophole, somebody's going to take advantage of it. But the alternative to that is to close that loophole with more regulation. And that's what some of these countries in Europe have done is they have put so many restrictions on the government. I sometimes wonder how they operate at all because the government can't do this, it can't do that, it can't do the other thing. You know, so as restrictive as we may think it is here, we actually have it pretty good. And you're right. We're also taught, well, let me back up on this for a minute. We used to be taught that the Constitution was not there to live in us. And the Constitution doesn't give us anything. The Constitution is there to keep government from taking away those
Mhm.
things. It's not a limit on us, it's a limit on them.
Mhm.
So, but
Well, let me
we're taught that, and other cultures just are not. They're taught this is against the law, and
it's
that's it.
different. It's different.
Oh, big time.
This has a different flair to it. Let me back up to an uncomfortable truth that you mentioned that's hard to swallow in a
Mhm.
general sense, but I think it's true and it's unfortunate. And that is that not only for Germany, since we've been talking about it,
Mhm.
and it's a wonderful place. We're just talking about certain things, and yes, I have my specific reactions due to familiar experience through family, but a belief base and form of ideas. But one uncomfortable truth is that we do, in a sense, have the government that
Mhm.
we deserve, that we
Yeah.
ask for.
Yes.
Um,
100%. Yes.
it's an unfortunate thing because I find that it's true.
It's an
Be-
uncomfortable truth.
But the reason that that's true is that the majority gets their way, roughly speaking, and the individual may oppose it all the waking days of their lives, and it matters not. It's about the democracy of the situation, and because there's that democracy, we also have injected that constitution,
Mhm.
which actually is the actual defender, not the democracy side. The
Mhm.
actual defender, in my opinion, castrate me if I'm wrong. Well, don't do that. Is the Constitution, that and Bill of Rights. That
Well,
is the big daddy in the
actually, it's
rodeo.
us. Actually, it's us. The Constitution is there in legalese for legal proceedings, but the actual defender is us because the minute we stop believing in it, the minute the whole idea of a constitution that is supposed to be our guiding principle,
Mhm.
the minute we stop believing in that, it's just another piece of paper or another
Oh yeah.
piece of
Well, yeah,
vellum or
yeah.
whatever.
So
So the
the end.
ultimate defender is us.
Yeah. The ultimate defender is the but once that, so it's ingrained in us in a general sense because not everybody is
Mhm.
aware, but that we have these basic certain rights, and that if we go somewhere else around the world, you've mentioned that in other episodes in the past, it's not like we take those certain of those
Oh
rights
no.
aren't going to be as obviously
No,
present for you.
your constitutional rights end at the border. You go to Canada or you go to Mexico, I mean,
Yeah.
Europe, Asia, Africa, wherever, your constitutional rights end at the border, and you are now subject to the constitution and the laws of that nation.
Yeah.
Now, if you happen to be like we were in the military, we were operating under a status of forces agreement. So there were certain things built into place. For instance, if depending upon the offense, um, it would be turned over to the military and it would be handled in a military court. Other things, you were just tried out on the civilian court and it was your tail end in a sling. And that was all there was to it.
Hmm.
If you stole from a German store, you were picked up by the German police, thrown in a German jail. And that was all there was to it. But if it happened on a military base, even though it's in Germany and it's on German soil, it was handled by the military authorities. So
Right.
there was some, but a civilian not working for the military, you were just on your own.
Yeah.
And they don't want to hear I'm an American and I have rights, because you might have those rights in America, but you ain't in America now. You're not in Kansas anymore, Toto.
Yeah.
So you
Well,
can just drop that stuff right now.
it appears that you know it's a it's a never ending cycle in terms of people with power imposing upon other people.
Mhm.
And ironically, if the other people, meaning the average Joe, had the power themselves, it's evident to me that they would in turn inflict said power upon the populace themselves. What I'm getting at is, and that's my opinion. I don't know that that's 100% right, but I think that the problem is the ability to have that power in one's hand. There may be good players, and there have to be good
Mhm.
players, but the idea of an increase in the ability to have leeway with decisions upon the lives of other people also comes with a little bit of that narcissism that raises to the it shakes the head, and it
Mhm.
causes people to think of themselves a little bit more Superman
And
than
that's why you have to put limits on those positions,
right.
you
Yeah,
know. And it's up to each society to create those limits,
yeah.
you
So
know.
that's my
And I'm not saying any one country is better than the other. And because I have not been a world traveler, I've traveled to a few places in Europe, but there's a difference in spending the night in Paris and living in Germany for 3 years and living the remaining 58 years in America. You
yeah.
know, there's a huge difference, and there's more that I don't know about Germany, especially in the last 40 years, than I ever learned over there. So, I can
Yeah.
only share my experience.
Well, no. So look. So just back to that thing. I have little option. Just back to that thing, and I replied to you. I
Mhm.
understand that you're a caring person and you didn't mean
Mhm.
it in a mean way or a dismissive way. But notice that I had to defend the point for the public at large and just in general, because I have no choice other than to feel that due
Mhm.
to the close circumstance. So to reiterate and whatnot. But um,
And it would be strange if you didn't.
and it would be strange if I didn't. Although there's people that would fall into that camp within, people with a certain familiar circumstances. There's people that could give a crap, because
Mhm.
another thing about, so I I'm a certain age and I was taught a certain way, and it's not like my folks were hippies necessarily,
Yeah.
free flow. Like they were serious. My mom was a bit more modern, or a lot more modern, but my dad was very. You could have put him in 1835, and he'd be operating just fine. So I'm
Well,
very close to that scenario. So I have no other choice than to feel what I feel, but I
mhm.
do have a brain in order to think and balance things out.
Mhm.
Um, but there's that constant mixture of things occurring because we're
Mhm.
human beings. Um, so I wanted to really explain that, but you can't. But moving away from that, um, uh, populations being I guess damaged or restricted or imposed upon in one way or the other in a general sense has
Mhm.
been the norm, and we experience, notwithstanding all the crap that we could imagine now, with all the weird stuff, we're still miles away from any type of serious, um, uh, even though there's many examples, but we're many miles compared to, let's say, like a Venezuela,
Yeah. Yeah.
and such. So there's a sliding scale there as well.
Mhm.
So I understand. But when you
Yeah.
get, like, if you ask a Jew and say, well, yeah, the Holocaust, but man, did you hear about, what happened over here with this group? I mean, you have to say, well, yeah, that sucked, but hey,
They're completely different worlds. Yeah.
right,
Yeah, I
but
get it.
the Jewish guy's not going to say, yeah, okay, let me place my Jewish situation. No, they have their alignment, but they can include sympathy for the world around them.
Oh, sure. And
Um,
being empathetic, I think, is part of the human condition, because no matter how bad your history is or your situation is, you can still have empathy for someone in a bad situation, whether it's as
yeah,
bad as yours or not.
right.
You know,
If
um, Greg has a question for you. Have you ever been to Cuba?
no, never, at all. In fact, it would probably not be a good idea. There's many people that do go,
Hmm.
but for me, no. So my dad was involved in my dad went to the army during the missile crisis, and my dad was involved with three-letter agencies here in the United States, and the family held businesses that were big enough that where they would actually loan money to the. There's a whole thing. Not me. I'm saying that those people from that time, and so they would probably they would more likely be considered complete total enemies of the state to the level of how they feel about the United States as a whole. These family members, and I'm a derivative of that with a name that's very specific. Um, Less than 200 around the world with that. So there's no reality in which I would go to Cuba.
So you would probably end up being locked up or killed, basically.
I don't know that that's the case. Maybe not. I would not go.
Yeah, you wouldn't find out.
Because I'm quite the direct of that.
Yeah.
And it's not like they
Well,
haven't done that.
we discussed that in one of our first episodes, I believe, one of our audio podcast, and it's called Eloy's Revolutionary Roots, where we went through your entire story. And intriguing. And before anybody asks in the comments, it's very easy for somebody to say things like that. Yes, my dad was involved with 3-letter agencies, and he did this and he did that. The number of Navy SEALs I have met in my life outnumber the number of people who have ever made it through Navy SEAL school. Okay. 100% of what Eloy has said is documented.
Yeah, it's all documented. I mean,
the documentation is 100% there.
It's all solid. It's all solid, and it's true.
And it's, I swear to God, it would make for a great book. Well, if you would sit down and write it, it would make for a great book.
Yeah, there's a lot there, but remember that the people that came here were a group of people that weren't. There's a lot to that. So, look, immigration into the United States happens for a lot of reasons. One of the major reasons that immigration into the United States happens for, under the umbrella of a better life, is the economic aspect.
Mm-hmm. People
come here in a fair amount, not always. There's many different variations, but the ability to branch out economically and scale the ladders of economy is one of the driving forces that you see, and it's you could sense it. You can point to it. That was not the case for the Cuban exile community at all. They didn't come here because this is not to sound, and I have no say in this directly because I was born here, so whatever, but speaking about them that did, because there's a big difference. They came here not because they wanted to be United States citizens at all. They didn't want money at all. They didn't want to stay here at all.
I was just going to say that they always had the expectation that they would one day go back, right?
They didn't come here. They came here with the expectation that soon that couldn't last and it would be toppled. And it never happened. Okay. So it's very weird and unique in terms of, and it's not, that happened in the 1800s. Cubans came here in the 1800s.
No, it was in my lifetime.
No, I'm saying it also happened in the 1800s.
Oh, okay.
Cubans came here in the 1800s.
Oh, yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
People
have been emigrating back and forth. Yeah.
But for a similar reason, where they wanted to extract the Spanish from the island because they wanted independence, like they saw the United States do, as an example.
Yeah.
And like they saw Mexico do, as an example, because Mexico did it like in 1820 something or whatever, and they were like, well, we want to. So, but not everybody wanted that. And it goes back to what you're saying about, or what you had said. We get the government and the situation that we call for or want as a group of people. But just to wrap up the thing, they came here because of an urgency of literally not pretend, not maybe, not lukewarm, not
some of them were literally steps ahead of the firing squads.
They came here literally with the idea of freedom acutely at the top of the roster.
Mhm.
That is the concept, that has been the concept. I'm just harping on what was informed to me all my life,
Mhm.
growing up in a normal situation with an added Cuban angle to it,
Mhm.
with this notion of freedom ever present, ever presented in front of you. And if you are grown up in that style, plus the American standard is kind of that anyhow, but
Mhm.
maybe it's a little bit more subtle because we've had a long history
Yeah.
of not immediate danger. But if you compound all those concepts into a human being growing up in Miami circa the 1970s and 80s, um, you may get any result, but you might get a way of thinking like mine. Um, so freedom is the thing. So that's why one reacts the way,
Mhm.
rejects very quickly any imposition, but not unreasonably so. We live in a society. We want things to go smoothly. We just don't want
Mhm.
abuses. I guess
Right.
that's a fair trade off.
Yeah. And I'm with you there. And it's also an acceptable an acceptable amount of, I hesitate to say intervention because I don't, imposition. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah,
And there is an acceptable level of imposition. Like we all know we've got
correct.
to have a driver's license. We all know we've got to register the car. We all know we've got to have insurance on the car. Okay,
Yeah,
that's an acceptable. I have a choice in all that. I can choose not to drive a car, then I don't have to worry about it. But I
that's right.
can't but I can't complain that I can't get from point A to point B in the rain without getting wet because I have to accept that consequence. But so yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah. That balance, but when that balance is out of whack. So
well yeah, yeah,
For Americans, in a general sense, and you do have your militia groups and people
yeah,
such as that
whack
um,
jobs.
well, whether one thinks of them in one way or the other, these are people that are thinking of those things for whatever reason. You have all sorts of different groups.
Mhm.
You can't. People have the right to do such, think such ways and do, but as long as the system isn't so out of whack where
Mhm.
they're fricking shooting people by the dozens on the
Right.
side of the fence over by the fricking golf course, and then loading them into paddy wagons to drive them down to the local dump. Um, that extreme scenario that I just rolled out right there is an extreme scenario. But the reason I point it as extreme is that there's actual places across time that have done such
Sure.
things. And
But
so,
but
yeah,
there's one thing I think you're discounting in all of these discussions, and that is people, just people. Because do you really honestly think that if it came to that,
mhm.
people would stand for it? I think you'd have another civil war. You'd have
Yeah,
another revolution.
no, I think people,
People wouldn't stand for it.
no, I think people, I think not everybody would stand for it. I think that the majority would stand for it. I
I
think that the
don't.
majority would, I think that the majority would call, I think, look, this is what I think. I think in America, because frankly, it's the Constitution, it's our founding fathers, it's the concept of liberty.
Hmm.
Everything else is nice. I
Hmm.
like it. That's cool. You can wear
Right.
your hat, you can wear your little jacket, you can wear, but the foundation is freedom,
Hmm.
the individual.
Right. And the
If
minute
the
that is
time,
imposed on,
well, no, let me tell you,
people
no,
are
I
going to
know,
defend it.
I don't, I can't tell you either way, but I can tell you what I think. I think that the majority of people will be quite willing to turn your ass in a hot minute. I think that people will tell on each other and rat each other out like they do in these other countries. And I think that a small majority of Americans will be people that in their hearts it wells up within them that they will not lose their freedoms and they will definitely defend it. So I think that the majority will go the way of the gulag they will
I don't
sacrifice
think
your butt.
I don't think they'll happily get on those cattle cars. I don't
No,
think they'll
not
happily
happily.
get
No,
on.
not
I
happily.
don't think that the majority would get on those buses and be transported to camps voluntarily.
No, no, no.
I think majority of them would stand and say no.
No, no. Their option is
Oh, they
first.
would try to tell on you, yeah, but
Right, right. Their option,
they've
their
got to
option
get
would
through
be
the door.
their option would be in order. You're okay.
Hmm.
What's going on with your? Oh yeah, my neighbor, and then they'll off their neighbor, and it'll slowly minimize until
Yeah,
then it's your act.
if it gets to that point, then you're talking about a second revolutionary war.
No, but
If
you're the one that planted the scenario. I'm not saying that it'll get to that point. I'm saying if the conditions were right for such a thing, we're just assuming a
hmm
scenario.
and
I'm
and
not
I'm
saying that it's going to happen. If the conditions were placed here, I would put money on the table that the majority of people would be quite willing to put your butt on the chopping block, and that the smaller group of people within the greater American
mhm.
community, those smaller will be the defenders as best they can, but
See,
that the majority would.
I think that they are the majority.
Okay.
I think that
All right.
they are the majority because I don't think the situation would get to the point to where you're talking about.
No, you planted a scenario.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is I don't think it would get to that point. I don't think it would get
No,
to
I
that
don't
point.
know if I don't think that I don't think within I don't believe that within our lifetime and to the foreseeable future that we'll get to that. There's no need for that. But I'm saying, okay, I'll just say this. Do you remember during the Obama years, see something, say something?
Hmm.
And they were saying it to like neighbors and stuff, and then people started ratting. I mean, you could see people ratting people out all over the internet for different things. I mean, look.
And 99% of it was immediately discounted because they saw it for what it was.
I
They
think
saw
that
it as Joey's mad at Frankie, so Joey's trying to get Frankie in trouble with the law, and it didn't work. All it did was get Joey in trouble for filing a false report against Frankie.
no, the sentiment, dude.
And it went
People,
away just as quick as they brought it up.
no, the concept of okay, the scenario is just an example of the greater
Hmm.
nature of a human being. The
Right.
majority of people are quite. The majority of people could give a rat's tail about you under the category of American, under
You're
the
absolutely
category of even
you're
human being.
absolutely right.
And if you place before them the trade-off where they get to benefit or save their butt, because
But
let's say benefit is a little bit too dirty because it's a further goalpost. But in a condition in a situation where ratting out and such is occurring, um, in this supposed scenario, I'm not
mhm.
saying that it's a real thing. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But you pose sort of like
Yeah,
a thing.
because the reality was completely different than the scenario. I mean, they did with the see something, say something. That was for specific things, especially on public transportation. An unaccompanied backpack or a strange package or something like that. See
I'll just say
something, say something, and it went away almost as fast as it came in.
I'll just say this. I believe taking all that fluff out of the way
Hmm.
because it's very volatile. If you have 100% of people,
Hmm.
regardless of, let's say in a something we understand, a Western, let's say it's just the United States. It could be Canada, it could be whatever, but United States. 100% of people aren't necessarily. This is an assumption of mine.
Hmm.
I'm not sure of it, but 100% of people out of the 100, I would say a small percentage, I don't know what that number is, but a very small percentage would be the ones on the cutting edge of saying no to tyranny. And the majority, like the boiling frog, will stick in there. It's very few people that
Well,
will
yeah,
be,
but there's a
actually.
line. But there's a line that would have to be crossed before the masses would rise up, and that's what I'm getting at.
Oh, it would be a total disaster too because there is nothing to fight. There's nothing.
No, there's lots.
No, we live in communities,
Hmm.
um, and there's no, it's not like a military, people don't live in military. We live
No,
in communities.
but the thing
There's no,
you're forgetting is the military is made up of people just like you and me. And if you tell the commander of this company, go into this town and you know, uh, lock down the city hall and bring the mayor here and in handcuffs,
Red Dawn,
the
like the
military is
movie.
going to look at you and say, no, that's an illegal order and I refuse to follow it. And here is legal precedent as to why.
That's what they're gonna say, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is
All right.
one thing. That is one thing that's written into a lot of our laws and what have you. And somebody made a comment about it out there in the chat. If my commander were to come up and give me an order that I knew was illegal, go shoot Eloy, I could look him in the eye and be justified in saying, no, sir, that's
No,
an
sir.
unlawful order, and I must respectfully refuse to obey it. And
Boy,
it's incumbent upon you to do that.
boy, go
Yeah,
do that.
actually.
Well, look.
Mhm.
So I don't know that. I know that that's the standard idea, right? That and you were trained as
Yeah,
such,
and
right?
that
Like,
is the law. And every soldier wearing the uniform, soldier, sailor, airman, and marine, is trained that exact same way.
okay. So my scenario with the cities wasn't necessarily the military, but um, I was talking about the citizenry. You don't know who to fight. Everybody's a citizen dressed in
Mm-hmm.
different normal clothes. You don't have any. There is nothing to fight. But now you mentioned like a military coming in and like Red
Mm-hmm.
Dawn, the movie and whatnot. Um, they're trained
Mm-hmm.
and they're not supposed to intervene with civilians,
Mm-hmm.
as far as I know. I think
Yeah,
it's supposed
no,
to be
it's called posse comitatus. They have no jurisdiction until we are invaded and there's an active war going on. If Russia were to invade, posse comitatus goes out the window, then military authority is established, and that's it.
okay. So you know, if this wild scenario, which we're nowhere's near
Mhm.
seeing, but this wild scenario, it would be, in my opinion, that the majority of civilians, they may not like it. It depends on how it unfolds, because it
Mhm.
never unfolds the way it always unfolds, where a certain group um, are the odd ones out, and
Mhm.
then they increase the groups that are the odd man out. It
Mhm.
works on a sliding scale, like boiling that frog,
Sure, it
and
does.
it doesn't work like, hey, Americans, go tell on your fellow American. No, it doesn't work that way. It slowly increases. Oh, I'll give you
Mhm.
this example. I'll give you this
Well,
example.
then we got to think about wrapping it up because we're almost 2 hours in. But yeah,
Okay,
go ahead.
I'll give you this example. In Cuba,
Mhm.
not everybody left.
Mhm.
The majority of the people stayed,
Yeah.
even though they declared it what they did, communist and whatnot.
Yeah.
People stayed. It was a few people that left.
Yeah. But you you would have to get a feeling for the common man during the time. How many of them thought that that regime would last? How many of them were they just knew that Castro would be shot within the first week? How many of them just absolutely knew that Che Guevara would rise up against Castro and slit his throat, him and Raul, you know? Uh, so many
No,
people couldn't
Che
go,
Guevara
many
was killed
people
by the
lead.
Che Guevara was killed in South America.
Understood, but what I'm getting at is how many people knew that Castro and Raul would be in power as long as they were.
Nobody.
So that's what I'm getting at. So, it could have been from anywhere. It could have been from anywhere. And I know Che Guevara was killed in South America, but he
Yeah.
was a part of that
Yeah, you
first
were doing an
revolutionary
example.
thing. So, who could who knew how it was going to play out? And most people were content to sit and see. But once the proverbial ship started hitting the sand, it became too late
Hmm.
for them.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it simply because of YouTube and their little things like that, but let me just say the first thing that happened was the disarming of the public.
Mhm.
And that is the line that will not be crossed here.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, no. Okay, so let me just say this:
Mhm.
none of that has to happen here
No,
because
it doesn't.
because um, how can I say? You don't have to fight a war to imprison people in cages when they're
No.
already in cages that they think that they're free. You don't need to. You can use the system without violence, obvious, and still
Mhm.
imprison the people. They're still screwed. It's better than being locked in a cage that you can see and touch the walls. But
Mhm.
there's different types of cages and different
Oh,
types of
understood.
authoritarian. Yeah,
But the difference between us and many other countries is we're free to go. If we find a place that we'd like to go better, get there.
yeah,
We are free to
yeah.
go. There's
That is
nobody forcing us to stay.
that that is true. That is
And
true.
a lot of people have. There are a lot of
Yeah.
people that have gone to the UK, gone to Thailand. Thailand is one of the more popular, believe it or not, Thailand is one of the more popular destinations for single
I,
men.
I've seen that. I've
You know,
seen that.
there
And
are
South America
there are a lot of single men going to Thailand. Why I don't 100% understand, but okay,
for the
fine.
Thai girls.
It may be, it may just be for the food. I don't know, but that was interesting to me. I thought, wow, really?
There's a contingency of people that decide to up and go. I
Mhm.
mean, there's people that come here, like there's people that come. Well, there's more people that come here that leave. So that should
Yeah,
tell people something as well.
yeah.
Because for every scenario of, because it is true, it is true.
Mhm,
Just to wrap up, I'll wrap up. It is true on a sliding scale.
mhm,
You know, we put out examples, right,
mhm.
of a scenario that's kind of like an extreme case. But on a sliding scale, there's quite a number of places that appear to be not very safe,
Mhm,
instantaneously so,
mhm.
and not very autonomous friendly, instantaneously so.
Yeah.
And then there's places that shift up and down depending slightly, that are part of this sort of broader Western
Mhm,
community, let's say, for whatever lack of another word. Um, and so, you are right that people like Germany, even though it angered me at first, but now that we got in the weeds with it, it's still a quite an amazing. And I've met a lot of German people,
yeah.
quite an amazing and quite forward thinking, especially when you compare it to something as
Yeah.
devastating as what came before. So I'm completely in agreement with the gist of the whole thing. The
Mhm,
only part that I guess that is my um the only part where we differ for now, or maybe indefinitely, is my belief in the ability of people to, um, you know, cop out inevitably in a scenario which was a scenario that you planted, or that was
mhm.
planted, that was, just brought down just to see. In an extreme scenario, I think people break down, and it's only a few people that hold the line, let's say.
Mhm.
So I do believe that, regardless of whatever came before, I think that the majority fall the wayside, and a small group are the ones that defend the
I,
castle.
I I think it's more than you think, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I gave no number. I just think it's a
Yeah.
small amount, but maybe it is within that small amount in my mind. Maybe it is a huge. Maybe you're right. I don't know
Yeah.
all the
Well, I
pieces.
don't know either, but
Yeah,
you know,
I think it's fair to say that I could be completely wrong. I'm just looking
well,
at what happened before.
let's just settle on let's hope it never comes to where we either one of us has to find out. So,
Yeah.
in other words, don't be a jerk. Try to get along with your neighbor if you can, and just mind your own
Don't
damn
rat your
business.
Yeah. If your neighbor is hiding in your basement, like in that Quentin Tarantino movie, don't rat them out and point to the Nazi guy. They're in the basement just to save your butt.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do? You know what it is? What it is this is the train station lever with the that you know how it
The two
parts.
tracks, yeah.
Right. It's kind of like if given that option to human beings, boy, it becomes a difficult thing. You know, do you save
Well,
your own? Do you save the other? Does everybody get screwed? I mean, it, we're not perfectly prepared for such decision
no,
making
we're
as human
not.
beings.
We're not, and that's our
Yeah.
fault because we
Well,
don't educate ourselves.
I mean, it's just impossible. Who knows what? Like, if shots are fired, do
And
you,
that's you know what, and that's one thing I like about living by the seashore is that you only have jerks on three sides of you, and if they come from that way, you can hear them splash. You know, so
I think we'll leave it.
we need to wrap it up.
I think we'll leave it at that. I think
I
that's
have that. I have that embroidered on a pillow in my heavily fortified rec room. You know,
I like I like the imagery of that.
you know, you can't save everybody. All you can do is hope you don't live next door to them when they go off.
All right, so listen. Funny enough, we are sponsored by Steve Nealon and Harneal Media. But what's the? How do you say that part that you say that?
I
But
say
our
hard.
opinion.
I get real close to the mic and I turn on my radio voice. Well, first I clear my throat a little bit here. I put on my radio voice and I lean in and I go, Steve Nealon at Harneal Media. Harneal Media, your web solution, your web source. If you're looking to establish or increase your web presence, look no further than Harneal Media. They will take care of you. And you're not speaking with some nameless, faceless person in a call center that you're never going to speak to again. You're working with Steve and you're working with Shay. So check out Harneal Media. They will help you with your website. They will help you with your web store. They'll take care of you. They sponsor TrampledUnderfootPodcast.com. And we thank them for it daily.
And the ideas of the hosts are not. What's that part that we usually say?
That part. Okay, I see. I thought you were. I thought I was doing the spot.
No, you are doing a spot, but I
Oh,
was
okay.
thinking of that.
Views expressed by the performers on this program in no way represent the opinions of management or our sponsors.
Because
In other words, we said it. Steve didn't. He's innocent.
well, no, because that's the thing, right? I mean,
He's sitting back right now, going, "What have they done to my song?"
we go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time, and boy, we don't know what we're going to talk about. I had no idea we were going to go down this road. I mean, we went into
I wanted to talk about cartoons today, but you
never said that.
I was going to, and we
You
just got
led
off
us
on
down this
other topics.
Look, I'm not going to place blames. Stuff rolls where it rolls, and obviously it rolled into this world. What is it, like apocalyptic nightmare that we went into? It happens, but that's the cool thing. We don't know where it's going to go. So check us out. We're on YouTube, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on YouTube, and we have a site, trampledunderfootpodcast.com, where you can catch our past episodes. We're redefining the website right now, so
Under construction.
So it's a little under construction, so but they can access the.
Oh yeah, everything is still up there. You can go back and check our audio episodes, and I would highly recommend. I believe it's episode 4. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's episode 4. It's called Eloy's Revolutionary Roots. Give that one a listen. It's not only entertaining; it's educational. I learned a lot.
Excellent. All right. And nothing. If you have any show suggestions, you can leave us your comments or thoughts over on the Facebook page, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook.
Yeah.
All right. We're out of here. You guys be good, be safe. Thank you for hanging out with us, and we'll come back and see you this coming. And it's almost the end of the year, so it's like crazy.
Yeah, really. We're only a couple episodes away from our Christmas marathon.
It's insanity.
Mhm.
All right, we're out of here. See ya.
Peace.